Welcome again, everybody, to the Experience Economy podcast. My name is Bryce Ebling. This is where we talk to brand and marketing experts about the massive transition that we're seeing in the marketplace, moving from product and service businesses to more of an experience economy. Everything from technology, machine learning, IoT, connected devices, hyper-personalization. These are all various elements, various things that are contributing to the changing ways we communicate and create value for our customers, at least from my perspective. We're going to talk through these provocative challenges with our guests, find out from them what they think companies need to do to answer this challenge, maybe what they're doing in their company or in their industry to engage in becoming an experience provider rather than a product or service business. Today, I'm honored. I'm excited. I get to introduce Tara Riley, president of Freshcoat. Now, you've had a really interesting path to being president of Freshcoat, if I remember correctly. You've gone from originating in McDonald's at the beginning of your career, supporting selling franchises, moving to franchise sales with Sports Clips, back to McDonald's to consult with franchise owners, which is not an easy task by any stretch of the imagination. Moved on to Enhance Franchise, which I think they do wood refinishing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Primarily cabinet wood refinishing, absolutely. Yeah.
And then Housemaster, which is a franchise of home inspections. So all of those roles, every single one of them really led to being a great leader at Freshcoat from everything that I can see. I mean, after spending so much time in and around food and service, home improvement, I don't think there's anything anybody could ever say that is missing in your background. And more importantly, I think when it comes to franchising, I think you could throw the term jack of all trades, master of none right out the window, because your background proves that franchise experience is a lot more important than industry experience. It's truly impressive. Tara, welcome to the Experience Economy podcast. Did I miss anything?
No, Bryce, I appreciate that. Actually, I do want to throw in one more step that was along the way, and that was I worked with a company called Comfort Keepers for almost 5 years in senior in-home care. And that, again, I mean, the previous companies you mentioned were quite a few in the trade industries, but that's, again, a totally different
Healthcare
experience.
Too.
Yeah, so I always said I had all the H's, right? I had hamburgers and haircuts and home improvement and healthcare. So yeah, it's I think you nailed the idea of the fact that there's a franchise competency, and then there's the industry competency, and both are needed to be successful in any of these businesses. So, but the question
I think where I was going with that is I think it really proves the idea behind the industry knowledge, the industry competence can be brought along if you understand the core competency of franchising, because franchising in and of itself is extraordinarily complex, as we'll get into.
Yeah. I agree 100% with what you're saying, because, our job primarily as a franchisor is, first and foremost, we have to run a successful, competent franchise company. And then, of course, our franchise owners have to be able to run competent, whatever industry we're in Freshcoat, in our Freshcoat painting company, they have to be able to run that. We obviously have to be able to support them in that. So we have to have both competencies. But like you said, first and foremost, we have to be competent at being a franchisor. I can bring on the competencies in the industry. In fact, one of my first hires here at Freshcoat was a person who had 40 years of experience running painting companies, to make sure that I had, and is still our director of education, Brian Santos. He had the industry experience and could help us with the training and making sure we had that competency on staff. So those are, they're both critical, but first we have to be a franchisor.
So I know Freshcoat has a unique blend of commercial and residential services. I think you're up to almost 160 franchise units. Maybe you've passed that by now, or you're coming close to it. This is really a two-part question. One, tell me about Freshcoat. And then two, there's some nuance to this. What problems are you solving? And when I say that, there's a couple of problems that you're solving from my perspective. One is a franchisor, because you're providing a business model to investors. And then two, your franchisees are solving a problem for end consumers.
Right. Problems that we're solving. Yeah. I think you could make the questions more broad. I think, Bryce, to tell you about Freshcoat, let me ask you a question. I mean, and specifically, what are you interested in terms of Freshcoat? Or is there a little bit of a, I mean, we're a fantastic brand. I think we're the hottest brand going, but my objective is to make us an iconic brand. And from a vision, it was funny when I first got here, if you had asked me, I would have started with, okay, we're trying to get to this number or that number. And I said, well, no, that's not what we're trying to do. Numbers are numbers, but what's our vision? What are we really trying to get to? And I said, I think anybody who's building a brand, your objective is to become an iconic brand, to be known, trusted, and loved. And once we were aligned with that, it was really the objective of saying, okay, what gets us there? Now, do I know when we're going to get there? I won't know until we're there. But I do know that the steps to get us there start with, first and foremost, you're talking about experience, right? Making sure that the experience of our customers, to be trusted, to be known, we have to be broad. We have to continue to grow the business. It grows in two ways. Our existing franchise owners grow and scale their businesses locally, and we continue to increase the footprint of Freshcoat by adding more high quality owners. That's, first and foremost, that's how you get to be known. But to be trusted and loved, we have to be consistent. I go back to my roots at McDonald's. If you're wherever in the world you are and you buy a Big Mac, you expect to be a Big Mac to taste like a Big Mac. And that kind of level of consistency with our Freshcoat owners. If somebody trades with Freshcoat in their local market and they recommend Freshcoat to their mom or dad who live halfway across the country, or their cousin or their friend, they're going to describe an experience, and then their friend's going to expect that same experience from us. And so, creating a consistency of experience across our brands, that's a critical component. I'm sort of answering both questions at once, I think, Bryce, but so Freshcoat, what we're striving to do is that it's to ensure, that one, we're growing and scaling, but we're growing and scaling in a way that we continue to provide a consistent experience, that we can be trusted and loved, and that, our objective is to change the paradigm of, what customers tend to experience in the trades. And we're professionalizing that. We want to have we're from every craftsperson that works in our organization as a painter, to our franchise owners. Our objective is that we are continually growing, training, improving our quality, improving our experience. Then we're working and we're going towards that right direction. So we have initiatives all around that. So
when it comes to franchise, one of the things that I find that keeps me involved in franchising, in and around it anyway, for the past 20 years, is this idea of, I don't know the right term, but this idea that I as an individual, I have a choice. I can go out, for instance, let's take Freshcoat. I can go out and I can start a painting company, right? I get a paint bucket, I get a paintbrush, and I do some advertising. Or I can go to a franchisor, and you guys have been around 30 years, if I remember right, ish.
Yeah, 15 for Freshcoat.
15?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys have been around a long time. You've made a lot of mistakes to get to where you're at. You've made a lot of mistakes to your business model, and you've made a lot of changes and improvements. The guy that's investing in Freshcoat is investing in Freshcoat not because he can't just pick up a paint bucket on his own, but because he has a support system. He has a business model. He doesn't have to make all the same mistakes that have been made before him. He gets to start, 15 years ahead, right? Yeah. Can you talk about that with regard to your experience in franchising and how that plays a role in the experience the franchisors provide to franchisees?
Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's how we can provide a running head start, right? You know, basically people say our two best friends are trial and error. The good news is when you buy into, we've had lots of experiences with the trial and error, and you get to come in ahead of the curve when you start in any franchise organization, whether it's Freshcoat or any quality franchisor. That's what you're buying into, is saving time. It's interesting that people don't understand your time. The time you're investing into your business is the thing that should be the highest value to you. And if you want to go start your own business and go develop your own website and find your own brand and develop all your own systems, that's fantastic. But you're going to spend a lot of time in that trial and error, visiting with your friends, trial and error, doing that. Whereas we have all those problems solved. You're going to walk in the door. You don't have to develop your own brand. You don't have to. In fact, you have a brand that acts as a force multiplier, because it's a transferable brand. It is a proven brand. You have many neighbors that already maybe have gone before you, that are already brought the brand to market. Depending on the market you're in, all of the core systems and learning, a lot of that trial and error has already been done for you. So you're walking in ahead of the curve. Not only that, but you have the power of the synergy of working with fellow owners who are constantly trial and erroring new things and us, and the ability to save time. The other day, one of our experienced owners raised the question. He just had a weird invoicing issue with a vendor, but he had not called us yet. He just happened to raise that issue, and he made. We said, sure, don't worry about it. We'll handle it. We'll call that vendor, and we have the connections. You go work on taking care of our customers. And the problem was solved in, less than a couple hours. But he didn't have to pick up the phone and hassle. And he had been trying at his level to solve the problem for 4 months, and all of a sudden, once it got escalated, we were able to get a hold of the right people. And, that's where we save those are the examples of, not just on the day-to-day level, but things that we can help save time with. And again, I would say that that's something every franchisor has the capability of doing. And that's the power of being in a brand and in a franchise. Again, as an owner, you focus on your customers and driving revenues. We'll focus on trying to help you with the solve those little nagging problems in the background,
Yeah, I mean, you and I have known each other for a while. I think the way that the culture you've built at Freshcoat is one that doesn't exist in all franchisors, even quality franchisors, where, there's some franchisors that wouldn't take on that minutia, right? And I think it goes to show the experience that you want your owners to have, and the culture that you've built around supporting those owners, because the owners then see that as indicative of how they should be treating their customers. I think it's all related, to be honest, but I appreciate that story, because that is unique. Whether or not you know it, I think you do. I think it's fairly unique that a franchisor will get involved in a low level invoicing issue. Yes, it took you guys a couple of hours. It probably saved a few extra days of headaches of time for that franchisee.
I mean, it's like, if you understand the roles, right? Again, we're the facilitator. They're out there again, and it goes back to that concept of time. When you understand that, the most valuable thing we have is our franchise owners, partners' time out there, focused on our customers and focused on their employees, taking care of their customers and employees, and that experience, like you were talking about. When they're focused on that and not drugged down by, some nagging issue, that we could solve in a very short period of time, then I can't, we're not there to run the business for them every day, but, when we can take something, that's the synergy. That's where, you understand those two roles, it's a partnership. Exactly. And each partner has a role, and the roles are different, so we know, our role is to always constantly tweak the system, to build and protect the brand, but also to do things that help them scale and grow their business. Well, these are the kinds of things that help them scale and grow their business. So that's the win.
We've talked about the franchisor. We've talked about your franchisees. We've talked about retail customers. I'll call it retail, whether it's commercial or retail.
Right.
End consumers, maybe is a better way to put it. But you also have corporate staff too. When I think of those, I think of stakeholders. So as we continue down this line, feel free to answer with regard to stakeholder, any of those various stakeholders. Yeah. My vision of customer experience because we've talked about it before. I typically wait to share this part, but my vision of customer experience is every real or perceived interaction a company has or should have had with a consumer from the consumer's perspective. And that's a really interesting way to look at customer experience because then you have a whole new light, right? But when I say customer experience, customer journey, without my prejudice to it, what do you think of?
Wow. Bryce, we actually are aligned on this. I mean, it starts with, the customer journey is, if you think about the definition of brand, it's how they feel about you, whether or not they've even traded with you yet. So even it starts all the way at the beginning in terms of messaging. And actually, it actually starts even in the industry, right? So the customers in our, if I go in specifically into the world of the trades, they a lot of times already have an opinion of what they're going to experience. They may be putting off a project, for instance, because they're dreading the idea of having to work with contractors. So it all starts with just world perception. Then it's where what are we saying? So what attracted them to us? Is there something? What are the core messages that we're sending out there? And that's obviously clearly advertising and marketing. It starts there, but also word of mouth and reputation and however they hear about us, something attracts them to us. Then it's do we live that standard? Are we living the promise? Are we and that's an interesting concept. And it's one of the things as a that we are constantly working with our franchise owners because there's that. It's really easy as a business owner, and I've been a business owner, to you start to see everything from your own perspective, and it's hard to step back out and try to feel like, what does it be like to be a customer? That's one of the biggest challenges in any business. I don't, whether it's restaurants or, what's it like to be on that side of the counter? What's it like to be a customer? So that customer experience, to me, it's all about communication. Starts with understanding what problem are we trying to solve? What is the customer's desire? And, you asked that question at the beginning, and I think the problem we're trying to solve isn't necessarily just putting paint on walls, right? That's an end product. The problem we're really trying to solve is whether it's our commercial customers or our residential customers, it is, having, how do we be that, easy to use, right? Oh my God, we're calling FreshCoat because I don't have to worry about that. All those issues that I have in the back of my mind about what it's like, oh my God, what a headache it is to deal with this or that. The first problem we're solving is the customer experience. It's even the difference between, okay, am I going to put one painter on a project and be living in your house for 3 weeks? Or do I put 7 painters on a project and we're there for 4 days, right? The difference between that's one is thinking of it from my perspective. The other is thinking of it from the customer's perspective. Like, I'm trying to minimize the impact of I want to maximize your experience and minimize our impact on your life. Right. So That's a very deep question, but those are the kinds of things that we want to try and solve, in terms of our relationships with our customers, is just be that easy to use. This was so easy to use. I'm going to paint the rest of my house. Oh my God, I was dreading this. And it was, we've now put this in a place where I'm ready to do the next project because I'm energized by the fact that we were able to do this and it wasn't a headache and it was, it was painting done right. It's the way we do it. But
yeah, I think you touched on something, maximize, and I should have written this down, but I didn't. You said maximize the value to the customer, minimizing the impact in their life. I think one of the things that also does when you come at it from that perspective is you're also maximizing the efficiency for the business, because it's a round circle. And I think, people that don't look at business all that often, they tend to forget that, yes, that business owner is doing what's in the best interest of themselves. Well, yes, they're doing what's in the best interest of themselves by looking at the lens of the consumer, because if that consumer isn't happy, they're not going to have referrals. They're not going to buy from them again. They're not going to have a long-standing business. And I think, I know that is something that is in the back of your mind. I just wanted to round that out because that's a really interesting concept, that it is a full life cycle that most people don't think about.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of dynamics in there that people don't think about. Like I said, and I think this is an erroneous thought process by a contractor might be, well, it's just easier. I'll send one person out there and take some. And this is an exaggeration, but it takes longer. But you're right. But if the customer's not satisfied, if we haven't focused on the customer side, then we're not going to get those extra. If we're just average, if we're just the average contractor out there, then we're not going to get extraordinary referrals. We're not going to get all the benefit of it. That's one part of the circle. There's another. There's actually a productivity part of it, and that is the efficiency of getting in and out of projects and doing them on time. Also has a financial impact. People don't understand. There's actually every project day to day. There's load in, load out time. Whether you're loading in and out with one person or seven, there's that project. If you extend it out over more time, it actually extends the overhead of that project versus just if you run it. Yeah. So I mean, that economic factor doesn't often come into mind of maybe even experienced contractors haven't really figured that out. They're just struggling. They're just trying to get things done and managing, often trying to juggle 5 or 6 projects at once. I mean, not talking about our guys, but you see that. So, I mean, these are the things that we're trying to avoid, that we're trying to change and educate our folks on to give our customers a different experience. So
that leg up that we talked about, that, a head start in business. Absolutely. Yeah. What expectations? So expectations play a big role in customer experience, setting proper expectations. Right. What expectations do your stakeholders have of Freshcoat? Why?
Yeah. I think the expectations our stakeholders have is, first of all, it's going to be done right the first time, right? So painting, we put it right in our slogan. It's Freshcoat, painting done right. So, I think the first expectation is that we're going to, whatever the scope of the project, we go in, we go out, it's going to be done right. That means it's going to be done. You're not going to be coming back and saying, oh gosh, you splattered paint all over my floor. And to everything from the safety standpoint that, we're going to take care of their home. We're going to take care of their business. We're going to minimize our impact to there. But most importantly, that the outcome is going to be high quality, right? So, I think these are the things that people are expecting. They're expecting that because that's what we're promising as a brand. So, it's our job to live up to that, so.
This is a hard one because I know you guys were hit hard, at least initially. How have expectations changed as a result of COVID?
That's it's a hard question because there's it was such a rise. You talk about probably the most interesting and greatest challenge I've ever faced. I know as a business owner, manager, leader, it was that was an interesting and challenging time. How expectations have changed, I think, really have more to do with in doing business. I think interestingly, people are much more open to doing certain things virtually. I think across the board. So there are virtual things that we've all become more comfortable and enriched on. Just the conversation we're having right now, obviously we're doing that virtually, so I think that was an interesting pivot. It's one of the things that we moved towards. We definitely saw a decrease in demand for interior work, especially during the heart of COVID. That's making a comeback. But there was an increase for exteriors. And I think it was because, people were home working from home. They were home more, and all of a sudden they're outside, they were gardening, whatever, and they're like looking at their house going, oh man, it's been a while. This needs painting. So, that was a nuance for this particular industry. But I think, expectations, we're more conscious of, just our own behaviors and our safety pieces. We added, one of the things we did early was, realizing we were going to be in people's homes. And this is the power of a franchising network. Some of our franchises owners came up and said, hey, could we do disinfecting? Of course, early in it wasn't known how much of the transfer was contact versus airborne. And we put a team together and said, let's take a look at these products. We're in people's homes. We have, we're comfortable with it. We're professional applicators, right? So we understand that. We actually found some fantastic products that are actually very, very viable in our industry going forward, regardless of the pandemic. They have, it's interesting that the same products that kill viruses actually kill molds and mildews too. And mold and mildew is something that we deal with in painting. Like, you think about your fence gets moldy or the side of your house that isn't in the sun all the time. So, the benefit of it is we came up with some cool products that we're going to be using forever. But we have franchise owners out there that have made that part of their offering to a client. Hey, we will we've got these products, and when we're done painting, we're going to disinfect your whole house. It's part of the project. And that's, those are things that we've done to be able to differentiate ourselves from other painting companies and other contractors. Again, it's about doing things right and being able to, maybe alleviate some fears. Hey, it's always just a little weird to have somebody in your house, even though if I'm not there, and then you're like, somebody's been in my house, but to feel like, hey, this whole thing was disinfected after we're done. And there's it's a nice change. So these all came out of just, our focus when the pandemic hit and things started shutting down. Our focus was literally on how do we pivot? What do we need to do to protect our businesses, to move forward? Yeah. And so all these things came up, and, I couldn't have been prouder of our system. I mean, our franchise partners were amazing in that they were very yes and how. They were very, constantly looking forward. What can we do? And they all did a great job of pivoting. We had a little bit of disruption, but actually we finished the year with record sales. So I think, and that's testimony to what those guys did. Yeah.
I mean, to go through a pandemic where nobody knows what's going on, franchisees are looking to you, and you're saying, well, I don't know any more than you do yet, but let me figure this out for you. I mean, what a position to be in, to come out the other side with new applications. And I like that idea, the term you used, we're professional applicators, we're not painters.
Yeah.
Imagine what people could do if they step back and realize, yes, I do paint things. That is an end result, but that's not what I am. That's actually a really cool insight. And I'm sure you've used it a lot more than just today, but it proved very valuable in already having that insight in how you're able to come out of this better off than we went into it last year, obviously. Franchising is a really unique industry. We've already talked about that. It poses really unique challenges, especially to leaders like yourself. You've got staff, you have executive team members, you have at the corporate office, you have franchise advisory councils, you have franchisees, you have franchisee staff. Yeah. All of these create various hurdles in taking, whether it's an idea from franchisee in Ohio, or it's an idea and a concept from corporate. All of these create various barriers for a leader like yourself to take something from vision to fruition. What is your vision for meeting the expectations of an ideal customer experience, realizing all of the pits, holes, and divots you're going to have to walk through? Walk me through what this actually looks like.
Well, I mean, it starts with the fact that every customer is a little different, right? So you have to have core values I prefer to refer to systems as more of like a skeleton or a spine than a box.
Mm.
You know, uh, because it has to have the flexibility. You have that core spine. You have to have that spine. You have to have that core center, and then you've got things, bones and things that attach to that, right? And the question is, like when we were looking at Disinfect and Protect, the question we asked does it attach to our core? And that's where the idea that no, we're applications experts. This is just a different product to apply. That then we knew it attached. It was it could be part of the body, right? That's the thing. When you think of things as being in a box, there's you have a very narrow scope. You can expand things off of a skeleton. God knows, a year of COVID, I've expanded some things off this skeleton. It's like, but those are the types of things. Going back, but the customer experience. First of all, realizing that the customer in many ways defines their own what they want, and although there's averages, right? We can look at, okay, the average customer wants this. The bottom line is how do you have a consistent individualization, right? How can you be consistent but yet have things be individual? And to me, this is where franchising flourishes, because we have owners out there, owners who are owners are invested. They're invested in growing their business, and they live in their communities. I always tell them, our new owners at conference, I said, if you don't feel comfortable wearing your brand to your kids' school and their programs, and to your golf league and to bridge club, whatever you do, and going to shop at Walmart, whatever, if you don't feel comfortable wearing your flag, then then you need to look hard at what you're doing with your customer service. You want to be proud of your brand. I said, we want to make Freshcoat, our brand, iconic. It starts in every market. If every one of our owners is working to be iconic just in their zip codes, whatever that is, or their community, then we're heading in the right direction. So, but I don't know if I've answered your question, because it is a nuanced, there's a lot to that. And yet it's simple. It's the weird, so I think it's understanding.
I think it's simple because you have done it for so long in the exact same environment.
Yeah.
And, give credit where credit is due. When you were talking about the value of the brand, the only thing that popped in my head is, man, she started out at McDonald's, right? I mean, there aren't many brands on, at least in franchising. There are a handful, whatever, but there aren't many brands that can command the level of brand dominance that McDonald's does. And you started there. So that's what's really cool to me.
Yeah.
When it comes to leading, and it comes to getting buy-in from your vision, how do you know when people just get it? They've bought it hook, line, and sinker. What is it that you see that, they get it?
Yeah. I mean, probably the thing I think is when you hear other people naturally talking about that same vision, like, not because you're in the room, but you start to hear it, you hear it in the brand, like we want to be iconic, or you hear people repeating certain things. Obviously we can look at numbers and look at experiences. We look at metrics all the time, and we can see things in the metrics, but it's really in the soft side that you really know, do people get it? I can hear, when my door is open, I can hear our business coaches talking to our franchise partners, just hearing, and I'm only hearing one side of the conversation a lot of times, but I can tell based on the tone of the conversation, what are they talking about? And they're talking about how to take care of the customers, or they're talking about things like that. Then I know we're on the right track. Those are the softer things. I mean, clearly we want to see, consumer metrics and whether it's our social media reviews, or if it's our, we do surveys, with our customers, we can look at all that and try to glean, like, hey, we're in the right place. But it's really about, to me, we just had a virtual conference with all of our franchise partners The fact that they were they were engaged in that, they invested the time. To me, that's a sign. They're investing in themselves, but that they value the partnership and they value what they were going to learn. That is a great sign too. I think those are all things that I look to over the years, in my franchise, in our franchise community, is these are signs of positive, right? They're engaged with each other. We have an open circle where franchises can just ask a question and it goes out to every franchise. It may be a technical question, it may be a business question, it could be anything. Looking at that kind of just interaction and banter tells me a lot about mindset and what's going on in our community. And to see most things be very positive and, people jumping in to help, all ours, it rarely if a question gets posted, it's rare that it's more than 10 minutes before somebody has come up with a really considerate answer to it. And I think that's a culture that I really appreciate, because again, how we treat each other is, like you said, that's going to indicate how are we treating our customers I have to say early on, I had some, that wasn't always the case here. When I first got here, there was some negative banter back and forth, and I didn't, that's not a culture to me. To me, that's not, if we're not treating each other well, what is that saying about how we're treating customers? And, I remember talking to a particular owner who was kind of guilty of this. And he's like, well, I don't treat my customers that way. And so how would I know? You're certainly treating your colleagues that way, and us, it's like, why would I expect, well, that's different. Oh, no, it isn't really, it isn't different. So I'm proud when I look and see very positive things happening in our community. So
it's interesting because you talked about that, and it brought me back to the days when I was a franchisee at Money Mailer. And we had this was, 15 years ago, at least, probably. But anyway, we had a local franchise, and one of the things that we had was a broadcast email system to all the franchisees. And yes, some things were negative. Most things were very positive, but the one thing that was always a downer, if you will, was having Big Brother watch our communications. They promised they never would actually see those things. And every once in a while they'd creep into a conversation, and none of the franchisees that were on that original communication actually got there or had forwarded anything to them. So, it just brought me back to that, the concept of culture, because fostering that right culture, you're doing it right.
Well, and transparency is what we tell people. We try not to jump in on it, but we're honest. We're monitoring it. We watch it. If certain questions come up, like a technical question, Brian, our Santos, who's our technical expert, he calls that owner and says, "Hey, I'm here. Let me help you walk you through that question." He'll jump on afterwards and answer the question, to the public. But we try not to, we're not lying to anybody and saying, "Oh yeah, we're not looking at that." No, we just try not to. We try to be in the background, as much as
setting
possible.
Proper expectations up front. What a concept!
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing how that works. Hey, look, and we tell. I'm honest as to why, because the culture is important, and it's important to all of our owners that they can get, so they can maximize their value of using this product. If they want to look, they can take conversations offline all they want. I'm not going to, we're not monitoring that. That's different. But if you're going to be on the public forum, it's public.
So as we talk about customer experience, there's a lot that goes into it. You've mentioned, I'm going to rattle some things off. If I miss some, I miss some, but you've mentioned surveys for NPS score. You've mentioned reviews. You've mentioned interactions. You've mentioned, consistency of operation, things of that nature, consistency of procedure from location to location across the country.
Yeah.
And what role does technology play in all of this from your perspective?
It's huge. I know you and I've talked a lot about, where we're at. We're in the process of a full overhaul of our core technology. It started. I mean, if you think about technology, 20 years ago, we were just getting email and stuff, right? Starting to use text, and it was, technology has emerged and evolved in so many ways. In the beginning, you would get a piece of technology that made a task easier. We were on the forefront of offering a computerized quoting software that made it easier for us, for our franchise owners, one, to be cutting edge, but also consistent, right? So if you're going to have 4 or 5 estimators out there, if they're all using the same software and the same premise, then you're going to have a much more consistent experience, first of all, just in terms of pricing within an organization, but also the customer experience, right? So they get, an emailed quote, and now it looks the same. It's, that's part of that process. But it started with one technology and one task, and then there was another task. Accounting software has been around for a long time. CRMs have been around for a long time, managing our customer database. You have email softwares. You have scheduling software, time and attendance software, and all of a sudden you're like, on TM, it's like I have all this software, but none of it really talks to each other, or it, it does. Right. But so now, whereas each piece of technology saves us time or helps build consistency, the problem is there's this turbulence of trying to manage them all together. So our biggest thing right now is to help streamline that customer experience, is also to have integrated technology. I think the first time I ever heard the term was probably from you, but that was, the goal. We're integrating our technology stack. And so that, again, going back to our franchise partners, this is about saving them time. So they have the time to focus, but it's also about consistency of experience. So again, with this, from the time that somebody thinks about painting or comes into our system, how do we how do we make the communications consistent? How do we, and save our franchise partners time? How do we make sure that experience of both, not just our franchise partners, but their staff, our staff, how do we make that, consistent? How do we save time by not having to enter things 7 times? And so that whole flow of data. The other most important thing is that, data is such a critical component of working smarter in business, and one of the powers of being, for instance, in a franchise organization is that it's not just your data. You get to benchmark, you get to see, what's the system average? I feel like I should be doing better at this. How am I doing compared to my neighbors? How am I doing compared to the system as a whole? How am I doing compared to the industry? Having all that at our fingertips is just a huge power that, again, if you just started up Bryce's Painting, you wouldn't necessarily have that. So,
it's the power of scale.
It's the power of scale.
Other than a business model, which I'm not undercutting the value of that, because obviously I've been a franchisee in my life, and I've been around franchising most of my adult life. Other than a business model, scale is one of the things that is provide the biggest advantages to that starting point, to that head start that you talked about, because you don't have to go out and find your own vendors. You don't have to negotiate your own contracts. If you can do better than the national contract, fantastic, all the better to you. But that's because you have a local relationship that was already started in the first place, right?
Exactly. Yep.
You didn't have to start from scratch. So, no, that's amazing. Tara, do you have any last minute thoughts that you'd like to share, questions you'd like to ask or pose to us here at the Experience Economy podcast before we wrap up?
Wow. Bryce, I just want to thank you for inviting me to join you. It's a great conversation. I think we all share a love of business and franchising, and I just appreciate the chance to talk about things I love, which is, of course, my brand, but also just business in general. So appreciate it, and of course, appreciate our relationship too. So appreciate all the help you've given me over the years.
Absolutely. Well, this about wraps up this episode of the Experience Economy podcast. Can't thank you, Tara, enough for taking your time, share your experiences, impart your wisdom, As we transition from product and service businesses to more of an economy focused on nothing but really delivering that ideal, iconic customer experience that you talked about. For the Experience Economy podcast, I'm Bryce Ebling.